Hello, this is SickleYield with another Render Like a Pro feature. This one was also requested by a user, and in this case they asked that I try to improve a scene that they sent me using only free resources, and I'm going to do that with everything that they've already included in the scene, with one exception for the male character, which is that they used the default Genesis 8 male skin, the base male, and I am not going to use that because it is low in detail. I am going to use the Walther skin, which is for free from ShareCG and which has got a friendly license for commercial use. So at some point I will be applying the Walther skin, Walther, and you can look in the description for a link to that free product from ShareCG. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. Here's the scene. The scene uses the products A Day at the Beach bundle and the Genesis 8 Male Starter Essentials, and I believe the Genesis 2 Female Starter Essentials, because we've got a Genesis 8 Male and a Genesis 2 Female here. Now, I couldn't find the Day at the Beach bundle in the store, but I believe it is free to anyone with a Daz account, and it should show up in your Daz Install Manager as a free thing that you can download. So here we are in Daz Studio. You can see here that the user who sent this, who created the scene originally, has the render preset set to active viewport, which is why it's a weird square here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to the golden ratio landscape and zoom in like this. So we have a better angle on our figures here. There's nothing super wrong with this composition. I might check the focal distance and frame width. The frame is a little bit wide because we're looking closely at these two figures in this case. I might actually widen the frame a little bit there to 50 and zoom that back in. That makes it clear that there's some distance between the figures there. He's a bit behind her. And I actually don't, yes, I do want him to clip her there in the background. I've got the figures overlapping a little bit to suggest that they pertain to one another, that he's looking sort of at her. So I'm going to leave that like that for now. I'm going to do a quick Iray preview render here by clicking on this up here. All right, that doesn't look very good yet, and we will determine the reason. Over here in the Scene tab, when I click on Environment and Accessories and click on Sandpit and go to my Surfaces tab, I can see that, oh, this is a 3D light shader. So I'm going to turn that preview off here. 3D light shaders do not look good in Iray most of the time. You can tell this is a 3D light shader because at the top, the lighting model says plastic, and the drop-down options are plastic, metallic. They look like this. There is no metallicity slider up here, regardless of which shader model that you use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the scene and apply the Iray base shader to everything. I use a product for this normally. It is me and Riversoft Art's 3D Light to Iray product, but this is a freebies only tutorial, so freebies is what we're going to use. I have got my Iray Uber base shader up here in my scripts dialog, and the way that you do that is in your Daz 3D library, you go to shader presets and scroll down to Iray and then Daz Uber, and the very top left here is the Iray Uber base, and if you right click on that, you can choose Create Custom Action, and it will allow you to create a little button in your scripts dialog up here for easier access. You can do that with almost anything in your library, create a button for it. So I'm going to just go through here to all these objects and all my characters. I might not have to do it with Genesis 8 Male actually, because I'm going to use a different skin for him, but We'll check that. We'll check that too. Just selecting everything, applying the Uber base to everything. That doesn't automatically fix things. We're still going to have to fix their settings. You can see here that the Genesis 8 male eyelashes already have an Iray shader on them. You can see that by the base mixing shader up here at the top where it says Metallicity Roughness. That indicates that this is the Iray shader, so we're good there. Genesis 8 male himself, let's look at him. Yep, he has an Iray shader on already. And the basic wear boxers and muscle shirt, those do not have an Iray shader, so I'm going to go ahead and apply that to them. By selecting all of their materials in the Surfaces tab and clicking on that base shader again. There we go. So with clothing here, this is a simple tweak. I'm just going to drag the layered weight all the way up to 1, or actually maybe more toward 0.8, and turn the roughness up because these aren't super shiny kinds of cloth. And I'm going to go to Simulation Settings. First, I'm going to select just the boxers. And I'm going to go to Simulation Settings and Deforce and add Deforce Modifier Dynamic Surface. And I'm going to repeat that with the shirt because these don't look quite right in the way that they hang. In the shirt, I'm also going to make another tweak here, which I'm going to go back to the Surface tab to do, where I will scroll down all the way down here, and now I have Deforce settings. So where it says Collision Layer, I am going to change the 1 to a 2. Setting the shirt on layer 2, where the shorts are on layer 1, you can see from their settings, they're on layer 1. This will make the shirt sort of float over the shorts in the setting and collide on top of them. And I'm also going to use one of the fix-it morphs that came with the shirt here in the Parameters tab to, it says, let's see, there's one here somewhere that says widen lower, because it's clipping very badly. There we go. And then I'm going to go to Simulation and Simulate. And oops, I made a mistake. I forgot to turn off Start Bones from Memorized Pose. So that's going to take too long. So I'm going to cancel that. It's going to take too long for this tutorial. I'm going to go back up here to my simulation settings and set Start Bones from Memorized Pose to off. So when I simulate, it will just simulate the current frame, and the figures will stay in their current positions and everything. Nothing on her is going to be simulated because her clothes are fitted and don't really need the help, but his shorts and shirt will look more realistic when they've been simulated. There we go. There we go. That's nice. That looks better. He's still clipping a little bit in the chest area. So in that case, the mesh smoothing is set kind of low here. In fact, it's basically not on at all. So I'm going to set that to 2 and 3 just to make sure that he's got no clipping in his chest there. So next we're going to deal with Genesis 2 females, shaders, and items. Again, the bikini itself, not a tremendously difficult tweak, just going to turn up the roughness a little bit. The hair now, that's going to need a little more attention. On that, after I apply the Iray Uber base, I am going to turn up the glossy layered weight all the way. I'm going to turn the roughness down a bit, but not a lot. The reflectivity up a bit, but not a lot. And I'm going to turn on glossy and isotropy. Glossy and isotropy. And this will sort of stretch out the reflections a little bit in a way that hair often looks like. I'm going to turn the bump up to 1, I think. Anything else here? I don't think I'm going to change any of those. I am going to turn on the translucency a little bit here. Translucency weight, I'm going to turn that up. And I'm going to set the translucency color. Actually, I'm going to leave it at white for now. And let's do a quick preview again and see what that looks like now. Okay, my hair's already looking a bit better. There are some odd little white spots where the translucency is, so since she's got red hair, I might go back and make the translucency red. There we go. And maybe even a little orange, because the transparent areas of red hair sometimes look a little more orange. There we go. There we go. I like that better. Okay. So now we're going to work on her skin. And again, I make a product, Beautiful Skin Iray, that is intended to work with this exact thing, but let's go bit by bit so you can see the sort of things that I would do with that. I'm going to leave the translucency weight at 0.5, but I'm going to change the base color effect to Scatter Transmit. And I'm going to set the reflectance tint to slightly greenish to sort of compensate the orangeness of this, realizing that the more saturated these colors are, the more red or orange her skin will look. So if I set this translucency color to very red, she comes out looking a bit more tan. Let me turn the translucency all the way up to a ridiculous level. There we go. See, she looks redder and more tan with the translucency on more red. But if I set it to 0.5 and have the translucency on this red, that's not too bad. That looks pretty decent. I don't love the way her specularity looks, so I am going to work on that. I'm going to turn on the dual lobe specular weight in here in the Surfaces tab. You can see that I've clicked on the word skin here and it selects all of her skin without selecting the inside of her mouth and eyes. So in this case, I am going to, drag the dual lobe specular weight up to about 50%. And turn the reflectivity. Actually, I'm going to leave the reflectivity where it is, I think. I'm going to set the roughness to where one lobe is a bit rougher than the other, just like that. That looks okay. This isn't the final lighting I'm going to use, so I may be changing that again and tweak it a little bit for the lights. But first I'm going to go to the glossy color and change it to white. You only want to use colored glossy in very specific situations when you're using Iray, and skin is almost never one of them. I'm going to go to her lips, and I'm going to repeat this process, except I'm going to leave them less rough so that it will be shinier. Yep, just like that. I'm going to go to her cornea. You can see that it has converted with a refraction index of 1.38 and a refraction rate of 1. I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm just going to set her eye reflection the same way, refracted, with 1.33. And that's what she has instead of the eye moisture that Genesis 8 has. Now, the gums and inner mouth, I don't need to do a lot with for this render because they're not really visible, but just know that those are usually less rough and shinier. And you might want to put a thin film on them. That's an option you can do. If you set base thin film to 1, it gives you an IOR you can set, and I'm going to set that to 1.33 so the gums will look nice and wet. And set the bump to 1. And that's all I'm really going to do with that right now. So before we proceed further, I'm going to go back, and you can see that she actually looks better. Her skin looks better than Genesis 8 male, and at the moment the reason for that is that she's got a more detailed skin texture. So that's why I'm going to go to my freebies that I downloaded and to Genesis 8 male and characters and Walther 2.0, and then under materials Iray, I'm going to go to Walther's tan skin, double click on that, and apply the Walther tan skin to Genesis 8 male. The Genesis 8 male base skin is good for testing purposes, but I would very seldom use it in a final render. It is less detailed than a lot of others that you will see. It's going to take a minute to load that. And another minute to preview render. There we go. You can see he's looking a bit more detailed. He's also looking a bit shiny. So let's go look at his specular settings. I might disagree. Sometimes I will disagree with an artist's interpretation of how a character should be shaded. In this case, yeah, I'm going to leave him like he is for now. But I'm going to go see what they did here exactly. You can see that they actually used a map in translucency color and they did a really detailed, nice map with veins on it and like that, so I'm going to leave that alone and not mess with their settings. And what did they do for subsurface? Here we go. They set the SSS all the way to 1, so I'm actually going to set that a little lower to 0.6. And I think I'm going to set hers a little in that area too, a little closer to that. Go down to SSS amount, it's already 0.4. And actually, I'm going to set the transmitted color to something more red or orange and to chromatic. You can see the difference that makes. It makes a significant difference there. So I'm going to go back to mono there on hers and set the transmitted color to a less saturated color so we don't get that squidgy Cupid doll look. There we go. That's a bit more lifelike. I'm going to set the SSS direction to negative so that it will scatter in the proper direction. I think that she needs actually a little more specularity than she's getting on most of those. So I'm going to set her roughness on the dual lobe specular weight and the glossy weight a little lower to get a little more sheen so that she matches him a little better. There we go. Before I start messing with the lighting, I'll go back and make some tweaks to the shader of our sand pit. It looks really white right now. It doesn't look very sandy. So I'm going to turn up the glossy layered weight, turn down the roughness a little, and I'm going to add a little tint to the base color, sort of a sandy, more sandy color that I like better. And I'm also going to add a little bit of metallicity down here in the metallic flakes. I'm going to add some metallic flakes, and I'm going to set those to a yellow color to give this more of a grainy sand look and to make it sparkle a little bit like sparkly sand. The next thing that I'm going to work on is the lighting. Now, the way that the scene is lighted by default is with just the default environment map here. And as you can see when I do the preview render, this has been set to visible, and the environment intensity has been set to 1.9, and the environment mode is set to dome only. That means that no matter what lights I add, it will only show the light from this dome. I'm going to first of all set this to dome and scene so that I can add other lights if I want. It immediately changed because the camera's headlamp is on. So let's go to parameters first and headlamp and set the headlamp to off. Always turn off the headlamp. Always turn off the headlamp. Then I'm going to go back to the render settings, to the environment map, and I am going to turn this off also. So to do that, I'm going to click on this little icon under environment map and the word none. And now what I have is the sky system lighting the scene instead of that blurry map. And that gives me this white sky back here. That's the environment tint. So first I'm going to set the environment tint to be a little bit blue to give us a blue sky. And I'm going to set the environment intensity to 1. Because I want the sky to look blue, but I also don't want the characters and the scene to be entirely blue. I'm going to set the time to 11 a.m. It went to PM there, which is why I just turned black, but I'm going to set it to 11 a.m. down here under SS time in the environment settings. There we go. And I am going to go down here and turn off draw ground first of all, just in case. And I'm going to set, let's see, there are some horizon settings here that we can use. I'm going to turn on some horizon blur to blur the color between the horizon color and the sky color. And then I'm going to set a color for the horizon. In this case, I think that changing the night color will change that, because I want sort of a dark teal to imply that there's an ocean back there. That didn't really make a difference. What about the ground color? Let's turn the ground back on. And I'm going to raise the horizon height. There we go. There we go. You see which of those is actually showing up. All right, that is the ground color. So I'm going to set the ground color to a deep teal to suggest an ocean in the background, an ocean blending into the sky. And I'm going to go back to my camera settings through the perspective view and see what those are. Okay, she's in focus, he is not. Actually, neither of them's really in focus here, so I'm going to change that a bit. I'm going to go to the camera settings and the focal distance and the f-stop, and I'm just going to increase the f-stop so that it encompasses these two characters. Maybe not her first part of her leg, but everything else between those two should be in focus. It looks black now because the headlamp is not on and there are no lights in the scene. So what I'm going to do next is to add lights. I'm going to use Create and New Spotlight right here. In this case, I am going to set the spotlight to Apply Active Viewport Transforms, and that means that the spotlight will be aimed from where the camera is aimed. That just makes it easier to find in the scene and move. So then I'll click Accept. And now I can go up here to the drop-down where it currently says Camera 1, and click on that and click on Spotlight, and now I'm looking at the view of the spotlight. So when I move the view over on the top right, I am actually moving my spotlight. And I'm going to move it back a ways because this is going to be acting as my main sun here. So when I switch to Iray, let's see if the effect of that light is showing up or if we need to turn it up a bit. I think we need to turn it up a little bit. So let's add some lumens here by some factors of 10. Just keep adding lumens until it looks like bright sunlight. That's more like it. That's not too bad. It's not really affecting the rest of the scene as much as I would like. So I'm going to also create another light for fill, rather than just allowing the sky system to handle the fill, as I have sometimes done in the past. I'm going to go to the perspective view, zoom way out, and create another spotlight using Apply Active Viewport Transform. And now Spotlight 2 can handle some of that fill, and I'm going to add some more zeros to the lumen count in the parameters of that also. So we have our nice sunny day at the beach. And now I can see better the luminosity and specularity on the skins of the characters. I'm going to maybe correct his pose a little bit here so his foot isn't sticking right into the sand, but that's something, you can decide on your own. Now, I still find Walther on Genesis 8 Male here to be a little too shiny, so I'm going to go back to the Surfaces tab and look at the skin, lips, nails settings. And there's multiple things here, so it's hard to tell. So I'm going to click on just the arm surface and see what those settings are. And it looks like my culprit here might be the dual lobe specular reflectivity, which is set really high, all the way to 1. So I'm going to select my skin, lips, nails by clicking on it, and I'm going to go to dual lobe specular reflectivity and set it down further than half, maybe to 0.4, 0.39. That's really more like what I want him to look like that. So I'm going to leave that be. So we've adjusted our materials. We've added more lights. We've added a backdrop. We've adjusted our shaders. I want to give him some hair also. So that's another thing that we're going to add that came with Walther. Under Genesis 8 Male Characters, Walther 2.0, Walther Hair System, I'm going to add the tousled hair prop and the brows. And he comes with some other hair pieces too for the arms and legs, which you can investigate on your own. I'm going to leave those off for now because they add to render time a bit. I just want him to not be entirely bald here. And the other thing that I might tweak a little more is the shader on her hair. I feel like it's still maybe a little dull, not as shiny as I'd like. So in this case, I think I might actually try and do that with a top coat. Set top coat weight to 1 and see how that looks. And it looks a lot shinier now, maybe a little too shiny. Maybe I'll set the top coat weight to 0.54. That's more like what I want, where I get some glints in the hair. I might even change the opacity on this hair a little bit so that it looks like less of a solid piece and it looks more wispy at the ends, like this. I've turned the opacity down to 0.61. And another thing I might do is, this is at resolution level base. So the other thing I'm going to do with this older hair is, in the Scene tab with it selected, I'm going to click on the button at the top right and go to Edit, Geometry, Convert to Sub D. There we go. That gives it the appearance of a little more detail and a little more realism. Let's see how we did compared to our initial render. And here we are with our original, the file that I was sent. The only thing I changed here is that I changed the camera position a little bit. And the new version with all of my changes to the camera position, the skin shaders, and especially the lighting. I think that you can see there's a visible improvement. Now, some people will argue with me about the use of spotlights versus just the use of an HDRI or the sky system. So let's do a third render for comparison, where I will go back and delete my 2 spotlights from the scene, and Control L makes it so that the scene doesn't go black with no lights in it. I'll go back to the Environment tab and set my environment intensity back up to 2, and I'll have to set my environment tint back to white or yellow-orange to get my daylight sky look. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Looks like my environment tint's going to have to be pretty much white to not yellowify the characters when we're lighting with just that dome. I don't think that looks as good. Let's try setting it at 1.8 or thereabouts. See how we do. All right, I'm going to render that out and see how it looks with the others. Here is the original at top left. Here is the new one with spotlights at bottom left. And here is the new one with just the sky system at bottom right. Again, I think that the spotlights are clearly and obviously superior here, but you can form your own conclusion. And you can also decide how much sky you want to use versus how much spotlights by turning up and down the sky system's environment intensity value and the lumens on your spotlights that are in your scene. I'm sorry this took so long. We really had a lot to talk about today, but thank you for your patience. I hope this is of help to you, and happy rendering!